Okay, we're up.
Recording in progress. All right, you guys, how exciting! All right, my name is Tiffany Noel Orff, and I am the founder of Welding Women Syndicate. And recently, I saw Travis Weber on LinkedIn, and he had posted something about cobots. And this is one topic that we have not necessarily talked about on the Welding Women Syndicate. And I asked him, is this something that we could do a conversation about? And he was like, heck yeah. So he also mentioned Kevin and Mark, who he lovingly said that knew way more about him and that they were just, awesome on the subject and that we could talk about it. And what I really want to gain from this conversation, you guys, is just basically giving visibility to this sector of the welding industry. You don't necessarily see it too often, but I'm hearing more and more in it on the LinkedIn. So, okay, so I'm gonna go through. I stalked all you guys. I'm sure you've seen the likes and the what have you. So Travis, your tagline says welding engineer. Hold on. And then Mark Fisher, yours says advanced technology. And Kevin, the same, advanced technology. Now, in layman's terms, Travis, what exactly does that mean?
Welding engineer because I went to college and have a welding engineering bachelor's of science. Welding engineer because I spend 40 plus hours every week in and out of various welding shops working with end users and how they weld, how do they get better at welding, how do they become more efficient, how do they do things faster, how do they better their process. So that's welding engineering to me.
Okay. Mark Fisher, your tagline, advanced technology. What exactly is that?
Advanced Tech is Lincoln's top tier premier product line. So everything that we do for robotics, the advanced welding power sources, so ones that are multi-process, that'll handle stick, MIG, TIG, that kind of product line. That's what I report through. So I support all of that equipment domestically and globally to help customers and empower them for a solution that fits their need.
Awesome. Kevin?
Similar to Mark, I guess one thing I can make a little bit of a twist on is Advanced Tech, or the title that I currently hold is Regional Manager Advanced Technology Solutions. That's just a fancy title that I'm the expert of welding with that red box that goes on a robot. What I try to do is, as Mark talked about, was empower the customer, was to educate them how to use the tool, the machine, as efficiently as possible for all different types of applications, from like maybe stainless or aluminum or carbon steel. Because the Power Wave, the advanced technology machine that Mark was referring to, has all that capability into it. And one thing I've learned in doing this for 22 years is a customer could be most successful, especially when it comes to producing a part, is if I can educate them how to use the waveform and give them something stable to run with, they're going to be able to do more with it than I ever will, because they know the part. They're the expert of the part. I may be the expert of that machine and that weld, but ultimately they're the expert of their part. So if I can show them how to make that weld, they are going to figure out how to make their part more efficiently with that weld.
Streamlining. I love it. So, in terms of cobots and automation, this is not something I necessarily see mainstream, but it's becoming more and more popular. I'm starting to see more robotics programs in schools. I've seen more posts from Lincoln. And I think just because in terms of it's what I'm looking for right now, I see it more often. But what is the wave of the future in terms of cobots and automation? I'll start with Travis.
Um, I think that cobots and automation are the wave of the future, right? And I don't know what the AWS statistics are, but a simple Google search will tell you that, we're short X 100,000 welders today. And then tomorrow it's X 100,000 plus 50, right? It just, as time goes on, it gets worse. Well, if we can't find people that want to be welders, right, that want to spend that time under the hood, we can't stop producing goods, right? I mean, we still need cars, we still need trucks, we still need tractors, we still need heat exchangers, we still need wind towers. So what do we have to do to get those welds done? We have to come up with a way for an automated piece of machinery, whether it's a robot or a cobot or some sort of hard automation, to do that. And in a perfect world, you could have 5 or 6 or 7 arcs going, sometimes more, operated by maybe 1 or 2 people that are supporting that, right? They still have to be skilled labor. They still have to know welding. They have to know automation. They have to know PLCs. They have to know, everything in between. But 2 people can handle multiple arcs instead of basically, if you're welding, right, it's one person, one arc for the most part.
Right. Interesting. Mr. Mark Fisher, Advanced Technology Man. So I just love your name.
Thank
It
you.
sounds so official. In terms of automation, now he was saying it is, this is the wave of the future. Now, do you think when people hear the word automation, do they think that we're taking jobs from welders, or do you think that it's creating just a different sector?
What a great question. That does become a divisive topic. People feel like, yeah, robots are taking jobs. Travis touched on it. Actually, what's happened is it's created a more technical field. We still need welders. You're using a phone. Everyone has a cell phone. If you can use a cell phone, you can program a robot. It's not that difficult. Welding is the hard part. The robot's just a manipulator, right? That's the easy part. But having the knowledge and the experience is what's created a technical new field for people to move into. They still need the welding fundamentals. And so, does it take jobs? It doesn't. It's taken the welder out of the fume. It's made a safer work environment. It's gotten output higher. It's made America competitive against a global workforce. It's typically when we look at a system, just to keep it simple, when we're looking at a system like a simple back-to-back, so it's a robot in the middle, two separate work zones. A system like that that's new to a facility, usually it creates 3 jobs above what the welder could have done because you need somebody to fit parts to go to the robot. Typically, you've added a material handler. You need somebody to program the robot. And those are all pretty separate things. You still got to move stuff. You still got to have somebody fit stuff. You still got to have somebody operate. So it creates jobs, and that's kind of the sticking point most people don't want to address. It creates jobs. It creates different jobs, and the robot has added technical positions that just didn't exist before.
Interesting. You're gonna have to repeat that. Not to me, but just period over and over. Because I swear that's always the conversation is that the robots are taking over. But in my head, like when I grew up, logic was always first and foremost. And I'm thinking somebody has to create them, somebody has to program them, someone's gonna have to repair them, and it's just a robot. Like we've seen way too many movies where like their minds are just going after. I'm like, there's gonna always be humans. Like, and I think that sometimes it's just that antiquated way where people are thinking like, oh, you don't need me anymore, you have a robot. But when you say 3/1, like that's amazing because I think it's like 360,000 welders are needed right now.
Yeah.
So, uh, I'll go to Kevin. So in terms of this conversation, what do you think? You've seen, I imagine, all different forms of technology. Do you think that it's going to take another 10 years for people to actually embrace this technology? Because it goes in trends, right? So right now people are like, oh, robots are going to take over our jobs. Do you think that it's going to take that long before people like actively embrace this?
I don't believe so. And I want to go back to what Travis and both Mark even mentioned. And we're in the world of welding. And one thing I commonly preach to our customers is, the skill that it may take to drive a robot, especially with a lot of the younger people coming to the marketplace. It's not hard. Mark said it perfect when we all have our iPhones and different type of phones, and we know how to work those like an expert. But there is still a skill requirement, right? So for those that still want to be a welder in this industry, they still can be a welder. Because to be a good robot programmer in this industry, you first have to understand the basics of welding. And I laugh because sometimes when I get into a welding cell, I take my finger and I'm pointing my finger to the screen right now. Is that if I can't figure something out and how to do it with the robot, the first thing I do is I point my finger and I close my eyes and picture that I'm welding. Then I make the robot do exactly that. So the skill set of a welder is still always going to need to be there. Teaching them how to program a robot is going to be easy. So to answer your question, we still have the need for skilled welders out there because that's the basis of all this. But to adapt and to adopt robotics into this world, I think that comes very quickly, more quickly than we can imagine. And we're seeing that in sales today.
Right. Now we're going to kind of expand upon this. We're talking about skill sets. So for instance, if we're talking to a high school student and maybe he saw a robotic movie, or he took some type of robotic class in high school, what expectations skill set wise should they have, or should they be acquiring right now, or a path in school in order to get into this industry? And we'll go with Travis.
Um, if you're interested in automation, right, doesn't not even necessarily welding automation, right? Because there's material handling, there's grinding, there's
Sure.
um, there automation is everywhere, and if it's not, it will be in 10, 15, 20 years. But a lot of schools have some sort of STEM program, right? A lot of the schools that I work with that have welding labs have an automation lab. There's so much crossover. If you pick a brand of robot, right, whether it's a material handling or a grinding or a welding operation, a lot of the controls are the same, right? There's nuances to each, but
Sure.
the high school students, college students, get into those STEM programs, get into those robotics programs. Um, with the internet and the things that we have at our fingertips, watch some YouTube videos, right? Figure out and look. I rely on the two guys on the bottom of the screen a lot when I get a teach pennant in my hand, because I don't do it all the time like they do. I do it enough to know that I need help, but sometimes they're tied up with their own projects, right? They're not sitting there waiting for me to call, and so this little thing right here, right? YouTube. Uh, how do you put a PAT code into a robot, right? Boom. There's 15 different options on how to enter PAT codes into robots to get new, various functions from a robot. Um, we've got for our cobot line, we have tons and tons of videos out there about how to do this or how to do that. And look, if you're a student or even not a student, right? If you're just someone who's interested, do that research, get that information, and then put yourself out there, right? If you're working in a facility, let's say you're welding in a shop, right? And you're welding over here, and on this side of the shop, they have robots. At lunchtime, right, or at break time, go find the guy that runs the robot or programs the robot and go, hey, how do I do this, right? Like, this interests me. I want to know more about it. First off, they'll appreciate the initiative, because chances are most of your coworkers are not taking their break to go learn how to do something they don't know. Um,
Right.
and chances are they'll teach you, right? I mean, we all know some folks that want their breaks, right? They're not interested in trying to help you or teach you, but for the most part, they want you to learn, right? So it's everywhere. It's all over the place. Just jump in with both feet. Figure it's there.
I love that answer. Mark Fisher, the same question. In terms of skill set, if we're thinking of like a high school student and he just absolutely wants to get to the robotics world and we'll keep it welding, what's something that they need to start learning, or the path that they should take in order to get into this industry?
Well, the first thing I would say is to be on time every day. I mean, it is so hard to find people that will come in every day and be on time. And my version of on time is early. If you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're already late, right? That's the way things are. And a lot of the customers I work with, they're willing to train people if they show the initiative, if they have the drive, and if they're there every day and they have that desire to do something. They'll train people how to program. They'll train people how to run a robot. I am a 100%. This is kind of near and dear to me. I'm a product of that system. I started at Lincoln on piecework. I'm a product of our weld school and not ever telling the company no. So they gave me opportunities and I never said no. And it's taken me to where I'm able to help customers and teams that we have around the world. It's a privilege and an honor for me to do that. But it's by being on time, not saying no, and sticking with it. So somebody that's coming out of high school and wants to do that, you can totally create your own opportunities. If you've got the drive and the determination and you have some of the basic skill sets needed, you're not afraid to pick up a wrench, right? Calluses are fine. That's all part of, what we see in welding. If you have that, it's a great foundation to build on. And most of these companies will teach you the extra stuff that you want to learn.
So
You guys have done this before, I think, right? This conversation has been had before. I promise. You guys are excellent at this.
I do want to point out that right, everything that I focused on were things that you need to learn, but Mark didn't talk anything about things that you need to learn, right? They're all things that are just part of who you are, being on time, having a good work ethic, right? So sometimes individuals don't have the opportunities that other individuals have, right? Just based on where they grew up, how they grew up, whatever. But being on time is not something that's really based on opportunity, right? That's just general knowledge, right? Having a good work ethic, not necessarily based on opportunity. So, regardless of where you're at, what you're coming from, and where you're going, some of the basics that Mark talked about are not taught. They're just things that you know.
Attitude and action. Those are the only two things in life you can control. Attitude and action. Right?
Absolutely. Work ethic. It's
Yeah.
funny because I've seen from 17 to 70 in some of the classes that I've taught, and work ethic is just non-existent anymore. And just like you're saying, being early, I have to be early. I have to prepare. I have to make sure I'm a micromanager. I've always had business, but not everybody's like that. But just to be on time, like you rarely see it anymore. You know what I mean? It's interesting that you say that. We haven't even talked about like maybe you should have this qualification or have this certification. You're basically like, please just be on time. Good grief. Like we will figure out the rest. Like I absolutely love that. I mean, it saddens me as well, but
But that's the feedback you'd get from so many different places. I mean, not any one place. They're all going to have the same theme. It's that context is carried so many places.
Wow. Now, Kevin Fleming, the same question, skill set. So we know we need to have a good work ethic and be on time. Like these to me, it's like common sense. I guess I was raised that way, but it's not necessarily these days. And apparently across the board, this is something that's lacking in people. So what do you think skill set a high school student should, or whomever, if they're trying to get into this field?
I like to think back about my career and how I chose to get into welding because I actually started out in a pre-med program because you don't get into something mechanical, you get into something that is going to pay or going to be high dollar or something that there's going to be a need for. But what happened is during my college education, I stumbled upon welding and stumbling across it actually in a really odd way was by welding on a demolition derby car. And that's how I got into welding. I was 19 years of age. But the reason I never looked at getting into, I guess, any type of mechanical field or welding in general was I was told it was dirty. You don't want to do that. But once I realized that it's really not, there's safe ways to do it. And I looked at once I seen the opportunity out there that there is a need, right? You just said the number 360K of possible chances of opportunity for employment. So when I looked at that as a young engineer, I'm like, there's opportunity for me. There's things I can definitely move the meter here and not be lost in numbers, right? So like Travis, I'm a graduate from the Fair State University. At the time, we're graduating about 20 to 25 grads a year. I think now the program's up to 50, but I think they might have finally crossed 1,000 since the program was kicked off. So I see an opportunity. So with opportunity, I would create my skill set to go that route, right? So how do you choose business? How do you choose, accounting? How do you choose whatever? Some point or another, you got to make a decision to go one direction or another. I went the mechanical route because I like to work with my hands. And you got to have some of that aptitude to want to work with your hands and understand the welding side of the business. But people will teach you, right? AWS is there. There's all kinds of educational stuff from the AWS.org and what they're doing is great. Then on top of it, for a young student, like, well, I can't afford to go to college. I can't afford this. You know what? AWS.org, there is so much money that is available for young students to go to college. And I'm an active member in West Michigan, and I'm on I'm the chairman for the scholarship board. Last year, we gave away $48,000 just from little West Michigan. Right, Detroit section's even bigger. National, I mean, it's $1 million plus in scholarships per year coming from AWS. So there is opportunities to learn. So if you have the need, as Mark said, show up on time. We can teach you the skill set. The industry wants you. They want to bring you in. It's not what you heard. It's not for the second rate students. That's it. This is for you want a career and you want an opportunity in life. The welding industry can give you that. Trust me, you got 3 guys in front of you that can attest to that. plus, and it's not only for guys. We more and more 10 to 15, even 20% of our incoming hires for sales trainees are now female, right? So the message is carrying out there, and some of the best welders I've come across have been female, and it's great to see that because of the skill set they have. I'm just a big fan. So if you got the need or the will or the want, the opportunity is there. And if you got worried about college and the funding of college, look into aws.org. There is plenty of scholarships to go around. And hopefully this message gets carried out to a lot of young individuals that they can see that opportunity for themselves.
I absolutely love you. Just because you brought up the woman aspect, you kind of jumped the gun on it, but it's interesting because I don't necessarily see too many women in it, and I try to have my finger on the pulse of like who's doing what and where. But did you say 20%?
Yeah, the last numbers they were. And actually, I'll take that back a step further. And I think the other number I pulled from was for Ferris State. I go up there every year and I do a little info session talking about the company, and we do it for recruiting and one to get to know the students. But their program is 10% plus strong, and it may be pushing 20% on female students now in the program studying to be weld engineers in this industry.
That is amazing. I absolutely love that. Like, sometimes the numbers are just so staggering low that it's just disheartening. And, I talk to people all over the world. To hear that number, oh my God, like I'm just a huge fan now. I can't even, like, that's where we look for the companies that support, and we look for where the pulse is for women, why they're going there. So I absolutely love that. And I cannot wait. It's going to go on. I have so many platforms that I'm going to like make sure this is on a loop. I absolutely love that. Now, in terms of visibility, so, and I'll ask you guys all separately. Of course, I'm going to say something about women because it's Welding Women Syndicate. Now, do you, Travis Weber, I see you're on multiple things. You're teaching, you're demoing, you're trying, you're doing this and that. Now, when it comes to the automation aspect, robotics, do you see a lot of women in your journeys?
I don't, and I don't know that there's a reason to that other than it's generally a numbers game,
Right.
right? So we're talking about on the Lincoln sales side, right? That 10 to maybe 20% of our incoming trainees are females, right? At Ferris State, the welding engineers, 10 to 20% are female, right? So that means 80 or 90% are male. Um, and so when I go into some of these facilities, right, I don't see every facility in Southwest Ohio. I see maybe 50% of those, or 60 or 70% of those. And then I don't necessarily see inside every welding cell or every robotic cell. Um, I don't see a ton of females in that role. And again, I don't think it's because they're not capable. I think they're perfectly capable. I just think it's a numbers game, right? You start multiplying that 10% or that 20% out, and I'm sure that there's some lady's going to watch this, some gal's going to watch this and cuss me out for saying that I don't see a lot of them, because I'm sure that they're there. I just don't physically see them on a regular basis. But again, I don't believe it's because they're not capable. I think that they just haven't taken the opportunity, haven't been given the opportunity, haven't been in the right place at the right time.
You just said it right there. And I'll kind of demystify my theory on it in a minute. But Mark Fisher, what do you think about visibility in women? Do you often see women in this field?
I do, but I have a different, I guess I have a different market perspective of it than what Travis does. So Travis, he has his specific territory. That's his microcosm. And mine is a little broader because of the role within the company. And so I see, yeah, exactly.
And Mark, maybe you should let everybody know what so I'm responsible for Southwest Ohio, Southeast Indiana, Northern Kentucky. I basically cover like 15 counties, right? So overall, not a real big scope. Mark, what's your scope?
Global.
Yeah, how many countries?
I'm up to
Answer this
16
better.
now.
Holy shit. Sorry.
So I run into women in various levels, right? I see a lot of women. I just was working with a woman this week in our waveform development group. So all of the cool advanced waveforms that we produce, are coming out of that group. There's a woman in that group. I was just working with her this week. On a customer level, I do see it. I don't see it as frequently as I would say when we're discussing specifically robotic programming. I don't see that as much. I do see a lot of women in the repair weld aspect. If we're looking at a big automotive frame line, there's always some aspect of repair. Yeah, I see a lot of women there. I see more women in TIG. Kevin hit the nail right on the head. Women automatically, if you take a woman to a gun range and if she's never shot before, she shoots better than half the guys there because they're not overcompensating. Same thing with TIG. Women naturally are more patient and make the best TIG welders. It's just part and parcel. It's just the way it is. So I typically see more women in a TIG aspect, usually some kind of an aluminum product. But I see them on various levels, even within the company and outside.
I hate TIG welding.
Maybe you don't have the patience
I am
for
like, trust me, I am like the exception to the rule. Like everybody knows, and I teach it and I do it if I have to, right? But if there is a rod for it, I'm gonna use it because I just love stick welding. I'm in automotive customizing, like it has no business in my world, but there's just something so cathartic about stick welding that I can't help. When people say that, I'm like, yeah, I know, I got it. It's so funny, but it is true. You see it more often with women, but I'm the one that likes to get dirty. I've been playing in dirt since I was 4, so it just kind of follows me. It's funny. So globally, now, Kevin Fleming, as terms of visibility, do you think there's a reason behind it? And I'm not trying to put back you guys up, but I'm going to kind of like share my opinion on the reasoning why I think. And the reason why I actually am having this conversation is the visibility, because I think that Travis said it, that there is just not enough opportunity. But as we see more and more, social media or conversations had, people start demystifying the idea of robotics because it's really not that hard, right? Just like you guys said, with the cell phone, come on. I mean, we have all these apps running. We're running businesses off of them. It's not that hard. But I think because there's just not enough access to women just to get the general knowledge of what you guys are doing, that they don't go into the field, right? So in terms of visibility, Kevin, what do you think?
Well, I think I started the statement earlier, and I think this is a good reason why. And the Ferris program, when I was in it, was probably 1% or 2% female in the program. The program now is pushing sometimes up to 20%, right? I don't know the exact number, and I don't want to speak the statistics of I know of that program, but it's up and coming, right? We talked about the sales training program that Lincoln has. We bring in recruits every year. We have more females in that program than we ever had, right? Coming in because it's up and coming. So the visibility of what we're seeing may not be a result of what we have. It could have been just that back in the day, it was said it was a man's world. It's your dirty job. A woman doesn't want to do that. But this world is changing. We're all equal one way or another. So I think part of it is it's just up and coming. And the years going forward, in 10 years from now, and maybe it is 20%, maybe it is 30% females running robots and doing the welding that's out there, because they, by all means, I don't care race or gender, the capabilities there. If you have the need and want to do it, you go do it, right? And I think hopefully the world will give you that opportunity to do it. And I do have a couple of stories where, especially on the robotic side, there's a couple of females that I remember quite closely that worked for very, very, very large automotive customers, the biggest of the tiers. And I learned from them, right? I always learn from my customers. And I don't want to mention their names, but one and was it working for an exhaust manufacturer, and she was just an amazing. She knew the product line, right? So I'm like, I didn't know exhaust as well as I should have. I was better in frames and seating and cross members, and she was teaching me a thing or two, and I was just eating it up. I'm like, tell me more, please, please. And she did a great job with it. And another environment was a pretty rough environment. And this particular female, she owned that account. She owned that house, right? She ran the shop, and I was just impressed. And I, as a supplier to her, I just go to her, what do you need? What are your challenges, and how do I help you? Right? Because I knew she could take off with it from there. So I've had a couple of cool experiences with females throughout the years that they just own the shop on the robots, and I was always impressed with their ability.
I love hearing that. And
Can
I
I
think
add to
that we're
Kevin?
seeing more and more of that, as like, I think as we're just kind of demystifying the idea that it's not just a man's world, and we're hearing more stories of women getting their feet in, and more of them just being more confident about their skill set and not caring what other people think, and just completely smashing it, owning the companies. I think in the one week, it was Stephanie, myself, and I think her name is Brianna out of Texas, who opened a welding school. Like, these are the things that we're starting to see more often, right? And so, like, as these things are starting to happen, we're demystifying the idea that, like, oh, we can't do, or just little ladies. Like, come on now, you had a kid, you're basically grown to make children. Like, it's not that hard, or you know what I mean? Like, that's hard. Welding, not so much. Robotics, not so much. Like, we have all the technology in our hand, but I think that women, we are born to micromanage households. So I don't know why there's ever a question why we can't manage something. It's just like those old antiquated ideas, right? You guys have such cool positive outlooks on it. Obviously, you're not going to tell me like a bunch of crap because this is going to go public, but like, it seems like you guys are saying this from your heart. You know what I mean? Like, come on, like, you don't have to tell me a story about some woman who like completely smashed, owning this business or running a shop, or like 20%, dude. That's just, to me, like, I love to hear these stories, because you don't. Like, in 13 years that I've been welding, I have literally worked with one woman, right? So like, when I hear these stories, I'm like, hell yeah, it's actually happening. And God gave me the big mouth that he did, so I share this with all the people that I know across the world. So that's the whole point of having this conversation. But
So Rosie the Riveter existed for a reason,
right,
right? That is what got us through World War II.
exactly,
At the time, men were going off to war, and women were keeping the infrastructure of the country going. My point to that is part of society lost its way.
right,
We stopped incentivizing kids to be interested in tool and die making. Welding wasn't in the forefront of people's minds. They had to pay to be in sports, pay to be in band. You had to have a bake sale to fund something for a school. And so we took those core principles away, and they made other things at the forefront of kids' minds. So they weren't interested in those things. Like Kevin said, it was less about kind of getting your hands dirty and more about showing the appealing side or the sexier side of welding. And we
right.
took it out of the forefront of people's minds, where that was what it was before. It was part of our culture, it's part of the industry. I think had we not lost sight of that, to Travis's point earlier, those opportunities would be there for everyone.
Sure.
It would be an interesting subject and an interesting topic to put in kids' minds again. But we took it away, and now we're desperately trying to bring it back and fill all these positions.
Well, you know what? I don't think it's a desperation thing. I think it's just more a visibility. And now with social media, we're able to bridge that gap really quickly. And just to kind of go back on the Rosie the Riveter part, I actually just heard a conversation from an actual Rosie the Riveter. She was a welder, not a riveter, not in blueprints, not in engineering. And she was so matter of fact about this. And it kind of goes back to like how we're basically programmed as women. She was like, I had no choice. I just did my job. And the woman who's asking, she's holding the interview. God bless her, but she was not a welder, right? So I was like thinking all the questions that I could ask this woman, and she was just like, I never even thought about it being like a man's world, or why would I do that because it's dirty. She's like, we had no choice. There were no men there. We just went out and we welded, and that's what we did. Like, I wish that there was still that mindset, and it's coming back, but it's slowly and surely we're talking to men and women to like remember how almost 100 years ago, you guys were doing this. You were doing it matter of factly. It wasn't a big deal. Stop questioning and just go out and do it. And it's the visibility thing. You know what I mean? Like, there's people who don't even realize they want to get dirty, or there's people who realize that don't even want to get into engineering, because there's like a glamorizing, like you said. And that's why I try to show different perspectives. Like, we like to see the glamorous TIG. We like to see the dirty pipe welding. We like to see the robotics. You don't know unless you're presented the opportunity. And I think that opportunity, the presentation, like, there's so many initiatives, but there's not necessarily the opportunity because there's just too many agendas here, right? So when you just go back to the basics and you show a woman who did it and she was like, I just did it. It was a job. I hope people embrace that more. Like, it's just not that hard. I have people come into the shop. I have 7 cars in the shop right now, and I'm the only person in there. And they're like, whoa. And I'm like, it's really not that hard. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just basically wielding a wrench and welding on some stuff and teaching people. And they're like, what? Like, it's like abnormal. And I'm like, it really is not. Like, you went to kindergarten and your teacher was a woman and she taught you all these things. This is no different. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what happened, right? Hopefully, with the numbers that I'm seeing or hearing from you guys, we can gain that back, because there really is a huge deficit right now. And, you know, we don't want it just to be robots. I'm kidding, you guys. Mr. Advanced Technology people. Now, I had to give you some hell on some level. Let's see. So program-wise, what is out there? And I know you guys are all Lincoln. God bless you. What programs are there available that people could look toward if they're trying to advance themselves in this career or want to get more information about robotics, engineering, automation? We'll go with Travis first.
Again, so part of my job responsibility is working with the local career tech centers, right? So I get involved some with high schools, but most of, several high schools in a county will have one career tech center. And I don't necessarily get involved with all the high schools, but I do the career tech center. And again, every single one of those career tech centers has some sort of robotics or automation, or certainly they all have welding, and whether that's traditional welding or auto body welding or whatever, right? Those exist for a reason. And I think so. So let's go back to the gap that we just talked about in the skills, right? So my own personal story: I came home as a sophomore from high school after touring our career tech center, and told my mom, I'm like, hey, I'm definitely signing up for the welding program. And we had talked about it because I'm a '90s kid, so I had watched Monster Garage. I'd seen Orange County Choppers. Like, that to me was so cool, right? And I'm like, I want to do that. And so I came home, I told my mom, I'm like, hey, I'm going to join the welding program at our career tech center. And she was like, oh, okay. And it wasn't until after I graduated college and was living out on my own, working for Lincoln, had bought my first house. And I forget how the conversation came up, but she admitted to me that when I came home that night and told her that, she was embarrassed. She felt that she was like, well, when I was in high school, this is her, when she
Sure.
was in high school, like, that's where the rejects and the dropouts and that's where the kids that didn't want to go to school and didn't want to amount to anything, that's where they went, right?
Wow.
And it, again, at that point, I was through college, right? I started to make something of myself, and so I didn't really, like, I didn't feel like she was ragging on me. It was just a perspective, right? Who
Sure.
Someone from the generation previous to me was like, yeah, good people don't go there, right? They don't do that.
Mhm.
And I think, the more that I'm on social media, the more that I'm around some of these welding programs and around these shops, right? That narrative is changing, right? That stigma is going away. But
Sure.
as we all know, right, as we're all in the business world, right, a bad review goes 10 times farther than 5 good reviews.
Yes,
So
it does.
all these years of bad stigma, bad publicity around career tech centers and welding and plumbers and pipe fitters and electricians and everybody, right? I gravitate towards welding because that's my gig, but it's not just welding. We're working to build that back. And these career tech centers, with state funded grants and the money that's available to them, most of them are nicer than any of the weld shops that I go into on a regular basis, right? They've got newer equipment, they've got better toys. They can get a science and technology grant with filling out some paperwork to cover new toys that some shops don't have the money to buy, right? So obviously this is automation focused, and who doesn't like new toys, right? One of my posts a couple weeks ago, I was talking about our cobot that we have here in Cincinnati for doing demos and trials and tests. I treat that as a toy, right? And not like an action figure that I might sit on and break, but as something to play with, something that brings me enjoyment.
Now we know you too much.
Well, not that kind of easy. But who doesn't want to get involved with that kind of stuff? I mean, it's not. Maybe if you grew up with cobots in your kitchen pouring your cereal or something like that, it wouldn't be exciting to you. But I didn't. I grew up in small town northern Michigan, and I grew up on a farm and was around hardworking people and trades, and it was like, okay, where can I go with this? So
Mark Fisher, as far as like programs out there, where could one pivot if they were trying to get into this?
So, like I had touched on before, I think if you have a local employer near you, you can get free training, right? If you've got a local place near you that has robots, they're gonna have a robot training program. I guarantee it. Some facilities we go into, they have dedicated training centers just for that. So if you have the interest, that's an avenue that costs you nothing except to apply and then show up on time every day, right? We have, as a company, we have training facilities as well, performs internal and external facing training. A few of those here in Cleveland, plus a few others spread out over the US. There is tons of vocational schools, high schools have the same programs. But I think if, like I said, if someone has the desire and they exhibit all of those, they have the fire in their belly, right? They have that, and they show that desire. Most employers will not turn a blind eye to that, and they are willing to train. So if you've got some fundamentals, you can get the rest on paid training because the company would be willing to do that.
Love it. Mr. Kevin Fleming, what do you think as far as programs and someone's interested? Where should they seek to get more education or more skill on the subject?
I just want to know why I'm third, because after following those two guys and the comments they made, it's hard. It is difficult.
got to go the other way around for the next question.
But
Education.
I mean, they hit so many key points, and I really like, the technical training of centers and the high school and tech centers are available, and the community colleges. There's a lot of programs out there to get into. Then I really like where Mark took it when talking about employers, right? As we drive around and we visit our customers, the one thing we see in every door is like help wanted, right? So, and if you don't want to go the college route, you just want to go through the I'll call it the school of hard knocks, and there's a lot of successful people that have come that way. And Mark stated his path in this journey, starting out as piecework on the floor at Lincoln Electric and working his way up to being known as the welding expert for Lincoln Electric globally, right? That is the man right there.
That is
And
the man. That's a
that
really
is the man.
title. That's
Yeah,
very
it's a big title. Now I forget where I'm going to go with this, but what was I?
School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, School of Hard Knocks. There is another customer, and again, I don't want to mention his name, but he worked himself up from the ranks from a welder to a weld tech to a weld engineer to being getting the title as the it was they call it the MTP team, right? Machine tooling and production team. He was calling the shots for a very large tier one German manufacturer, German tier one supplier, and he was the man calling all the shots for all the new equipment coming in. And he worked his way up from the floor through weld tech, through weld engineering, through engineering manager to become the leader of the MTP team. And I thought that was amazing. So there's multiple ways to get there, be it through the tech centers and colleges if you choose that route, be it through what we call it the School of Hard Knocks and taking that chance with an employer and getting trained, I'd say for free, and get paid while you're getting trained because the opportunities are there right now. Take advantage.
Yeah.
I love that. It's interesting because I have a workforce company that's going to actually place one of their employees in my shop. And I'm like, well, what do you want them to learn? Everything. And I was like, okay, like they're going to
include
floors, they're going to pull apart cars, they're going to weld this, they're going to talk to vendors. Like, okay, everything it is. It's interesting that you guys state such humble ways, you know what I mean? Because I literally, the way I got my foot into the first shop was sweeping the floor and handing a wrench, and then to go to owning my own shop twice. So it's when you demystify like, oh, it's so hard, or oh, there's no access, and you just say, just go knock on the door. I promise you, that's the first thing I tell my students is ask them if there's an apprenticeship, ask them if there's some floors to be swept, and then just like you, work ethic, stay longer hours, stay during your lunch. That's how I did everything. And primarily because I'm a woman, and a lot of men didn't want to, I don't know if they were gatekeeping or they just were not prepared to have a woman in there, but I will not take no for an answer. I refuse, and I think you guys have one perspective and then I have another, just because it is different as a woman. But if you are just hard nosed at everything and you just do not take no for an answer, people eventually, they need to fill those spaces, like those help wanted signs need to come down. So man or woman, this is like the perfect time just to get in, to get that education, regardless of how you do it, whether it's formal education or just walk in like, hey, what do you guys do here? Can I learn? That's how I did it. It's so interesting that you guys say that. It seems like such a mystery, like for different avenues of the welding sector that we don't know about. Like, oh, how did they do it? Like, oh, they must have like this crazy background in education. No, like just walk in there and tell them you need some training. I love that you guys say that. I mean, come on, you are Mr. Lincoln Electric over here. Like that's so, no, it's important to hear those type of like theories from people like you, because people want to be like that, right? And so they, try to achieve something like that. They're like, it's never going to happen. Yes, it will. Just be on time.
Right. We have, humbly, I would say, we have some of the brightest minds in welding. I mean, we have multiple PhD people with multiple PhDs that work in the company, right? And that's a totally different path. You can get a doctorate in metallurgy and have a job for anyone, right? You can have that. If that's your passion, you can have that career path. To Kevin's point, if you are looking for a job and want to work your way through, there are ways to get paid to train, and all you got to do is knock on the door. Be thirsty, right? Be thirsty.
Love that. It's so humbling just to hear it come to such basic terms. Like, just you got to want it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Love that. You guys are awesome. You've definitely done this before, and I appreciate that. I know we're 8 minutes in, but I'm going to ask all three of you. And I'm going to start with Kevin because, we have to change our rotation. And this is a good one. And we've kind of already like basically touched on this question, but I asked this to everybody when we're getting ready to end. So advice, and it could be anything. If it's education or mindset or skill set, advice to the high school's kid who knows he's going to get into welding, what would you give to him right now to help propel him in his career?
Pass. I'm kidding.
You wanted to go first. You're up.
Go first, pass. Oh, I'm kidding. Actually, I take pride in my relationship with my nephew, and there's a piece of advice I gave him, and it's the same advice I'll give anyone. In life, there's people that talk about doing stuff, and there's people that do it. So you have a choice in life. Do you want to be a talker? Or do you want to be a doer? And part of my advice for my nephew is like some of the things he wants to do in life. I'm like, you can't just talk about it. I'm like, you're gonna have to work hard to get there, and you got to be a doer. So like after I told him that, 2 months after that, he walked into his mom's office without missing a beat. He's like, Mom, you know what? In life, I want to be a doer. And that brought a tear to my eye. That just brought a tear to my eye. So that's the advice I give. You can talk about it or you can do it. And you have a choice. Become a doer. You'll go a long ways.
That's golden. I appreciate that. Let's see, who should I go next? We're gonna make Mark last. Travis, you're next. How can
I was
you
concerned
even
that I wasn't going to have anything to talk
follow up?
about. So
Like,
for the next question, let's go back to me first, so then I can say whatever I want. I have to echo what Kevin said. I'm going to say it a little differently, but just go get it, right? If you see something you want, go get it. If you want to learn something, go learn it. If you want to try something new, again, whether it's welding or automation or electrical or look, I know we're talking a lot about the trades, but if you want to try college or if you want to try finance or HR or whatever it is that you're interested in, go do it. Go try it out. Nothing is a life sentence, right? At least that we're talking about now, right? Honestly, when I went to Ferris. I went because some other folks pushed me. It wasn't 100% what I wanted. I enjoyed welding. I liked welding. But I was hell bent that I was going to join the Marine Corps. And I let some folks talk me into going to Ferris. And well, 13 years later, almost 14 years later, I'm still in welding. So obviously, I'm not upset with the decision that I made, right? I was going to go try it because that's what people, they said, hey, look, you've got a skill set, right? You've got the mind to figure out how things work. You're good with your hands. Take this and go someplace with it. And I was like, yeah, okay, let's try it. And here we are. So go do it. Go get it. Go do it.
Mr. Mark Fisher.
Boy,
How do you even follow up with this? You guys are.
I don't know. I got nothing.
No
I can't tap out though.
Yeah, right. All right. You have the best.
I would say I would circle back to what I said earlier. Attitude and actions. Those are the only two things in life you can control. High school kids, put the phone down. Put the phone down. Attitude and actions are the only things you can control. You're not going to find happiness on a 4.7-inch screen. If you don't have your own happiness or find a way to get your happiness, it's not going to come from anybody else. The only person stopping you is you. Be thirsty, show up on time, ask the questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions, right? That's how you learn, is by asking questions. And a very close friend of mine, Kevin Fleming, said, good people find good people. If you ask the questions to enough people, you'll find that person that will help you, that will answer the questions you have. Just stay thirsty. Don't get in your own way, get out of your own headspace, and make your own opportunities, and the doors will open.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. I did not even expect, I had no expectations, honestly. I just thought we're going to be some technical terms and it was going to be, more than what people can comprehend. And then I'm just like so inspired right now. Like, I appreciate that.
Just a bunch of welding geeks talking welding.
We
do a
Oh,
lot
we
of
can
that
do that too. There's still time.
Yes.
No, and it's funny because I was hoping it wasn't going to be like that, because it's pointless when you're talking to people who are either not in the industry or you're gearing it toward high school students who have very little knowledge on it, because it just goes over their head. But to hear this basic kind of common core type, like be on time, good work ethic, be a good person, like you guys are hired. Like, seriously, this is exactly what we needed. And I appreciate that. Like, it's interesting because from a woman's perspective, because we do not necessarily have the same opportunities, like I've created my own, right? And I think women, we wrap our heads around crap and we think too much or whatever the situation, and we just don't go for it, And so to hear you just basically say, go for it. And then the positions you guys are in, you're telling them, like, look, I did it. I am Mr. Lincoln. Like, just go do it. Like, it's very humbling. And I think it breaks down that stereotype, like they cannot do something. So this is a very, very, very appreciated conversation. And when I tell you that this is going to go across a whole slew of social media platforms, I'm on podcasts, YouTubes. Oh, hold on. Before we cut this, visibility for you guys. Why do you guys not have more social media? And yes, I do know LinkedIn is like the business of Instagram, right? But if in terms of visibility, you're trying to bring more awareness or bring different people to the industry, you certainly have to diversify here. I'm just saying, and I'm not criticizing, because you're going to get plenty of diversity in a minute. By the way, everybody here is on LinkedIn. Now, I don't know how this will work out if people will reach out to you. So I don't necessarily want to put like go ahead, reach out to this person. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I could delve out accordingly. So that's how that's going to work out. But you guys will be on podcast and YouTube and Instagram. I have 3 pages, 3 businesses. And all my sisters, we're global. So this is a very much appreciated conversation.
No, we appreciate you giving us the opportunity. obviously, we're all pretty well invested in welding on every level, varying, to varying degrees. But if there's anything that we can do, if there's questions that we can ask or answer, excuse me, please help send people our way. We're happy to do so. We have specific skill sets, and we want to pass that knowledge on to other folks and keep people in this industry. I know we've made a lot of jokes and had a lot of laughs, but this country didn't become the superpower that it is without people that work hard and without manufacturing as part of our background. And if we want to continue to be a global player in the economics world, we need to continue to manufacture. And on some level, a lot of that boils down to metalworking of some type, right? So we want this industry to continue to grow for future generations.
You guys are awesome. Well, I appreciate that. Now, hopefully we figure out how to do the download, and I appreciate you guys. Once everybody checks this out on whatever social media platform I'm going to be posting it to, I'm going to be following up with Travis and Kevin and Mark soon, just because I have questions on my own personal levels, just certain things. But I will talk to you guys next week, and I appreciate you guys for coming in, and yeah, have a great night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Now, Travis,